Hello and welcome to this episode of the Parents in PR podcast, a mini-series within Sparks by PRCA. I'm Alex Stevens, founder of Parents in PR and business director at Reuben, Sinclair, and today I'm joined by Roxanne Kalha. Roxy is founder of The Herd, a creative PR agency recently awarded New Agency of the Year at the PR Moment Awards and named by PR Week as one of the agencies to watch for 2024. Prior to starting The Herd, Roxy had over 15 years experience working in some of the most highly rated agencies in London. Roxy is also mother to Rufus, age 6, and is navigating his recent ADHD diagnosis. Roxy told me that she's very much trying to be a gentle parent, but mostly finds herself relating to all parody parent accounts on social media, which I will also confess to as well. Roxy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Cheers.
No worries. So starting and running a new agency is an amazing achievement on its own, let alone when you consider that you're also raising a young child. But I know that when you first had Rufus, you're actually working in an agency as an employee rather than running your own business. I wondered what your return to work was like from that perspective.
Yeah, I was lucky. I mean, there are some recent stats out by Careers After Babies saying that 79% of those that return to work, mothers that return to work full time, quit because it's too hard. I know, which is really depressing. But I was one of the lucky ones. I think I was the second most senior person in the agency when I left. I was also freelance. So when I became pregnant, I was freelance at the agency. No one had been pregnant before. So when I left, actually, I didn't know what I was going to come back to. I was hoping to go back to that agency, but it was not set in stone. So I didn't have official kit days. I didn't have a process. I didn't have maternity pay or a maternity structure. So it was quite scary for me when I left my job to have Rufus. But we kept talking throughout when I was pregnant and then when I had Rufus, and a job was created for me to come back permanently, and the agency were brilliant. Whilst I didn't have official kit days, we created them for me, so obviously I wasn't an employee at that point, but they paid me to come back for a few days as I was leading up to returning. I was massively involved in the conversation about what I needed and what I wanted, like what my nursery looked like. So that was great, and I think the key thing was the conversation. It was up to me to sort of decide and lead that in a positive way, and because of that, it felt a lot easier, and it felt like I was coming back to a space that felt really safe. So I was lucky. It was phased in. My hours were changed. I came back 4 days. My team were brilliant, and whilst I think when I was their age, I resented, I mean, if I'm honest, I'd see the women running off to collect their kids and I'd be like, oh, right, well, they get out of this meeting. And I had no idea. I apologize for anybody I ever thought that about. But my team would be like, Rox, you need to go. It's 5:30. You're going to miss Rufus. They were, and I loved that. And they would say to me in my one-to-ones with them, like, it's great to see you leaving loudly and being a parent, and showing us that you don't just have to disappear if you choose to have kids or go down that path. You can still be successful and senior and do it. And that that carried me through and made me want to make sure that I was creating something or setting an example, I guess, for the next generation of mothers in the agency. Yeah. So look, I was lucky and probably an anomaly, but I think the key to that, if anyone else is thinking about how do I replicate that, it's about making sure you have the right conversations early. And to be honest, you'll find out pretty quickly by the conversations that are being had how your employee intends to treat you when you get back. And I think from those conversations, you probably know whether that's the place for you to go back to.
Yeah, it's such an important point. I think communication is so key, and by the sounds of it, having a supportive team both above and kind of below you as well. And then I guess fast forward to now and running your own agency. I read on your website that The Herd has big plans to be the best place you've ever worked, and that's really quite a statement. And I wondered how you kind of go about doing that, particularly kind of in the context of working parents. What are you putting into place now that is really important to you from that perspective?
Well, I think the whole premise of The Herd is about listening, and we've just had a cultures and values session today, and it's about shaping things from the ground up. So it's not about me sitting in an ivory tower and deciding what a maternity policy or a parental policy looks like in this day and age. We haven't had anyone go on maternity leave yet. Because we're small at the moment, I would be looking to create something bespoke. So have a set of guidelines, but absolutely everyone's experience is different, and also everyone's pregnancy journey is different, and everybody's wraparound care is different. And so what I loved and at my previous agency was, what really helped was it felt very personal to me. So I think it's about having something that is maybe half baked, but if you can, creating space for you to sort of co-create what else that looks like to the person, because everyone has different needs. And I think that is what it's at the heart of the herd, is making every voice feel heard. And so that is I guess a policy, a culture, and a policy that I would take forward into creating, you know, a return to work plan and a maternity paternity package for my team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right. There's not a sort of one blanket thing that suits everyone. And you mentioned there both sort of culture and policies. So I guess, what do you think is more important in supporting working parents? Is it the culture side of things, or is it the policies themselves that are the foundation of it?
I don't think it's either. I think it's both. I think they
Okay.
should support each other. Like, for example, you can't have talk about a human first culture. We are human first, we are people first, but then have really robotic policies, like very much based around presenteeism, no flexibility, but we're human first. It's like, well, you're not human first. I think to have an authentic workplace where people really believe in your business, you need to back up the culture with the policies and the policies with the culture. Otherwise, I think you're creating a place where people will leave. They'll get brought in by one and they'll leave because of the other. And so I think you just need to make sure you walk the walk and talk the talk. And that's, you know, that's something that we hold ourselves accountable at the herd. We check in on our values regularly. If we get new people, we ask for their opinions on what our policies and culture is. We do staff surveys to make sure we are tracking and holding ourselves accountable, because it's quite easy to get, new business comes in and you're very busy and things can go a little awry, and you need to keep checking in and holding yourself accountable. So basically the short answer is, I think it's both. And that is what creates a good, honest workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's the beauty of being in a sort of startup environment, that you can kind of flex and develop things as you go
Yes,
along, and each of your team get the chance to impact that as well.
exactly. And because it's like we've only had one lead, we haven't gone through loads of rounds of leadership. There is some cohesion there. I've worked at places where you can tell, if you've gone through 7 different MDs, everyone's tried to put their stamp on something, it can end up,
Used.
yes, a bit confused. Whereas, as you say, we're new, we're not inheriting anything, and it's coming from this team that I've got in the room now.
Yeah,
So we are lucky in that sense, in terms of where we are in our journey.
amazing. Being a working parent is very much a privilege, and I know I'm certainly grateful to be fortunate enough to be both a mother and have a career, and I don't take that for granted, but it doesn't come without its struggles. And I think being more open about this can perhaps help other people feel kind of less alone. So I wondered what you have found to be your biggest challenges as a working parent within the PR industry.
Yeah, a good question. I think, in a nutshell, not burning out. Um, aka having boundaries, which us millennial workforce are a bit rubbish at, I think, quite a lot of the time. We grew up, I think the next generation are much better and can teach us a few things about that. And I'm lucky enough to have a brilliant team, mainly Gen Z team, and I learn a lot from them every day. But I think, it's about having boundaries, because especially if you're a founder, I find it hard to switch off, and that can make you worse at your job and make you worse at a parent, and you can feel like you're failing all around, and then it's not your head can be a not very nice place to be. We did a survey for women in PR, which I'm on the committee of, and only 3% of the women we surveyed found it easy to switch off, and 66% considered quitting the industry because of burnout, and a lot of them were citing either caring responsibilities and parental responsibilities, or being that sandwich generation of both. So I think, particularly as a woman, burnout is a real threat. So it is about having the boundaries and knowing what you will and won't do, and having time to switch off. I see a new biz lead come in, and you want to respond straight away, or a client email comes in late at night and it's trying to work out where you personally draw the line. I also am quite conscious that I'm setting an example. So if my team see me working at weekends and working late at night, sometimes they might feel there's an expectation on, there isn't, but they might feel there's an expectation on them. So I think it's also about remembering that you're setting the culture and you're setting the agenda for your team, as well as protecting your own mental health. So yeah, the challenge is not burning out, not overdoing it, not overcommitting, not trying to do everything and be superwoman, because that is a risk. And yeah, and I've got better at saying no to stuff. And I only go out of an evening unless it's a client event, like once a week. I try not to do it so that I have time to come home and put Rufus to bed and not be tired and just chill out a bit. But before I was going out, I'd be saying yes and I haven't seen my friends, and and my diary would feel full, and then I'd start the week and feel completely overwhelmed, and it'd be 9:05 on a Monday.
It's
So I
really
have quite
hard to
fast
say no,
rules
though,
about
isn't it? Especially if you're kind of used to doing that throughout your career previously.
Yeah, it's hard, and like you get older. I'm just coming up to 41, and I'm get tired, and so I just it's like I'd rather do fewer, bigger, better, to
Mhm.
borrow a phrase that I use like on the team for work. But I do fewer things, really enjoy them, and give yourself time to relax.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important. And I guess it kind of leads us to that kind of age-old question, like about whether you can have it all as a working parent. Like, we all talk about that, and I think there is almost kind of a bit of pressure, like especially when you do see some sort of real kind of what you might consider like female bosses that do appear to kind of have it all. But like, is that a bit of a fallacy? Like, is that a thing?
I mean, I guess you have to, and I have to do this with myself, is decide what your all is.
Yes.
Once you're firmly, like, because you can easily look around, and I am terrible at this, that comparison, comparison is a
Mm,
thief of joy, is a phrase for a reason. And my husband sometimes reminds me, like, oh, they did this or they did that, and it's like, well, just focus on the things you want to do. What is your all?
mm.
And then keep true to that, uh, rather than trying to, because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know how many balls someone is dropping to post that LinkedIn post at 6:05 saying they've already been to the gym and had 6 smoothies, and their kids are in Mandarin lessons and have played the violin in a concert before 10 a.m. And it's hard, but I think you just have to very much focus on your own journey and path. And I say that without trying to sound really spiritual, or I think it is just being really practical about what success looks like for you, and trying to block out all the noise. Be inspired by people, sure, and go to those places to to celebrate, but don't, if you find that social media or those, or any space is making you feel less than, I think shut it out for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Set sort of your own expectations, like you say, so
Yeah,
you kind of compare yourself to other people. It's never good. But yeah, a really hard thing to do as
really,
well. Yeah, no. Um, I know diversity and inclusion is hugely important to you personally, and also the Herd as an agency. And working mums often end up leaving our industry, which obviously contributes to a diversity issue, particularly at a sort of senior level. What do you think we as an industry can do to help working mums be given a kind of equal opportunity to flourish in their careers rather than feeling the need to leave PR altogether? Is there something that we can do to encourage working parents to stay within PR?
I don't think there's a silver bullet. I
No.
think flexibility is key.
Mhm.
um 85% of women exit employment within 3 years due to lack of flexibility. So that is a real problem. So I think for me, the biggest, I guess, thing that everyone could do, rather than some agencies could or couldn't, something that we can all do, is bring flexibility into the workplace. There was the new law by Anna Whitehouse that just got passed that said, that makes those conversations a bit easier, which is, whether you're a parent or you need flexibility for other reasons. I think trying to move your mindset out of, flexibility being the devil, or like, the enemy, and people, and seeing it as a way of people trying to shortchange you. I've heard people talk about, they're not getting their pound of flesh, or you're getting shortchanged. And I think trying to flip that mindset and understand, and schooling yourself on all the benefits that it can come with. Because I was lucky enough to come back, and I was the first person it was before COVID, so it was before flexibility was even really talked about, but I asked for 4 days. I didn't have to battle for it or write a deck or anything. It was like, sure, because I was a valued employer, and my boss at the time was like, yeah, sure, we know that you'll deliver. Obviously, like, let's come from a point of yes. Now, if this all goes wrong and somebody is not performing, then fine. But I think start from a point of yes, particularly on flexibility. I think you will get more out of your staff. It will make it easier for women to come back to work, because often they are the ones sorting out childcare or doing a lot of the coordination and logistics, because it is trickier for men, and other societal factors that we could do a whole other podcast on. But you know, from my experience as a woman, I think the flexibility was the thing that helped me, and by doing that, it made me feel like it was a pro-parent positive workplace. I felt then empowered to have other conversations, because I felt listened to, and that they understood that whilst I hadn't changed and my ambition hadn't changed, my out of work scenario had changed, and they helped, and I went above and beyond. I stayed there for another 5 years or whatever, you know. So, and they got a lot out of me. I came back 5 days as soon as Rufus was in school. I was, you know, so it pays off. You hire people for a reason. If you think they're good, I don't see why you'd want to hamstring them when just because they've had the audacity to procreate.
Yeah, how rude. No, and it's so true. And I think to your point about retention, I think if you can offer good flexible working, then clearly your team will likely stay with you, and it works both ways.
And you don't have to replace them. Like, we all know that replacing people is expensive, and it takes time and rounds of interviews, especially if they're senior people. Like, you rather better the devil you know, but, you know, stay with the good person that you've trained up, that you think is good, and find a way of making it work for both of you. I just, you know, 94%, I keep doing stats, but I just find them really interesting. 94% of workers that had a degree of flexibility stayed on 5 more extra, you know. It is proven, and economically, it's not just about the worker, although let's definitely put them first, but as a business, it makes sense.
Yeah, commercially, yeah. Why do you think that there is any, or are there any particular barriers specific to the PR industry that stops employers offering flexibility as standard? Like, are there any nuances within PR that are unique that make that happen?
Yes and no. I think sometimes a lot of agencies are run by men. That's just changed. I just saw the you know, more agencies in the top 150 are run by women than men for the first time ever. So that is promising and might help change things. And I think, you know, the industry is 24/7, and, you know, things do happen out of hours. And so I think, you know, employers may worry that, you know, you've got someone who is got a child and they might not be able to respond, but you just need to put things in place for that. I think it's lazy to be like, oh, we can't do it in our industry. Of course we can. You know, nurses have babies. You know, a lot of industries that are like ours still manage to have kids and do it. So I just think it's about, yes, identifying the barriers, but just putting processes in place, or a rota, or I don't know. It depends, I guess, which sector you're in PR. It is 24/7, but
There's a way around it. You can make it work.
Can make it work.
If you put it in.
Yeah, if you want to. And like I have done, there are lots of success stories of women that have managed to do it. So learn off of them. Ask, you know, if you don't know how to do it, but you have the willing and the impetus to do it. Find a woman that has gone back. Ask her. Come and ask me. Like, ask how, you know, how I've managed to do it, and what I would recommend. Like, find out, do the work. Don't just say no. Come from a place of yes, and that will all move the needle on.
Yeah, I love that. Come from a place of yes. It can be applied to so many different things as well. There are so many kind of issues and challenges within the PR industry, but if you really want to do it and you prioritize it, then you can make it happen.
We're PR people. We make shit happen.
Yeah, that's the point.
The things that I've made happen in my career, so many things, like llamas on Oxford Street, like the things that we make happen, people. I think this feels like, if we put our collective brain back, it's very achievable. Yeah.
If you can do llamas on Oxford Street, you can make flexible working work.
Exactly. That's the soundbite of this podcast.
Finally, you've achieved so much as a working parent, which is going to be inspiring to others. But if you could just talk about what the most important thing you have learned about on your journey as a working parent so far that you could share with anyone listening, like any kind of tip or word of wisdom that you would kind of want to share, what would that be?
Ask for what you need, because look, even if you don't get it, that will help you make a decision. I think always ask the question. Don't not because you're scared of the answer. I think sometimes even if it's not a yes and it's a no, it still helps you make decisions and will help you in years to come. And I knew from the first conversations I had with the agency I was at previously that I would be fine, and I knew that they were going to support me. So I came back 110% raring to go. If it had gone the other way, maybe it would be different. So I think always ask the questions. There is a law now to help you with flexibility. There's lots of people out there that can help you, but always ask for what you need.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so wise, and I love your, like I say, I love your point of coming from a point of yes as well. That's really useful. Roxy, thank you so much for talking with us today. I'm so excited to follow the herd and your journey. I think it's amazing, and what you're doing is really exciting. So yeah, looking forward to seeing everything that you do. But thank you so much for chatting about this today.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.